The notification appeared on every human device across the galaxy at exactly the same moment. Dr. Amara Okonkwo read it 3 times before she believed it was real. The Galactic Collective had summoned all human representatives to the Central Council chamber for an emergency announcement regarding Earth's planetary classification. Amara had worked at the Integration Center in Lagos for 2 years, ever since humanity made first contact with the collective. She had spent those years answering questions about Earth, explaining human customs, and generally serving as a bridge between her species and the wider galaxy. The aliens had always treated humans politely, but without much interest. Earth was classified as a Category 2 world, which apparently meant it was boring. Humans were labeled a minor threat species, which meant they were considered too weak to worry about. She boarded the orbital shuttle with hundreds of other human scientists and diplomats. Everyone looked confused. The collective rarely called emergency sessions, and they had never summoned an entire species before. The council chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from thousands of worlds. Amara found her assigned seat and looked around at the alien delegates. She recognized several species she had worked with. The Mellori were small and soft-furred, with large eyes that always looked worried. The Kasari had 4 arms and tough gray skin. The Velian were tall and thin, almost translucent. All of them seemed nervous today. High Assessor Quillen floated to the central platform. The Assessor was a crystalline being, beautiful and fragile-looking, with light refracting through their body in shifting patterns. Quillen led the scientific division that studied and classified new species and worlds. 3 solar cycles ago, the assessment division began a comprehensive study of the human homeworld, Quillen announced. Their voice was like chimes in wind. That study is now complete. Based on our findings, Earth has been reclassified from Category 2 to Category 12. Amara heard gasps from the alien delegates. She did not understand why. She leaned toward her colleague and whispered, "What does Category 12 mean?" Before he could answer, Quillen continued, "Earth is now designated a deathworld. Humans are reclassified from minor threat to apex deathworlders." The chamber erupted into chaos. Alien delegates began rushing toward the exits. Some were screaming. Others were calling for security. Amara watched in complete confusion as species she had known for years fled from the human section, as if running from fire. "This has to be a mistake," she said out loud. A Mellori diplomat she had worked with for months looked at her with pure terror in his large eyes. He stumbled backward and fell over his own feet, trying to get away from her. Amara stood up. "Wait, please. What is happening? Why is everyone afraid?" Nobody answered. Within minutes, the human delegates were alone in the vast chamber. Security barriers had risen around their section, sealing them in. Armed drones hovered overhead. "They are treating us like monsters," said a man beside her. Amara looked at the empty seats where her colleagues and friends had sat. She could not understand what had changed. Earth was just Earth. Humans were just humans. They were not special or dangerous. They were ordinary. A small voice came from behind the security barrier. "Dr. Okonkwo." Amara turned and saw a Mellori she did not recognize. The small creature was trembling so badly that her fur rippled like grass in wind. But she had not run away. "My name is Hasta," the Mellori said. "I'm an archivist with the assessment division. I need to show you something." "Show me what?" Hasta glanced at the security drones, then back at Amara. "The report. You need to understand what we found on your world. You need to understand why everyone is so afraid." Amara walked closer to the barrier. Hasta flinched but held her ground. "I have worked with aliens for 2 years," Amara said. "Nobody was ever afraid of me before today." "That is because we did not know," Hasta whispered. "We did not know what Earth really is. We did not know what humans really are." The small archivist looked up at Amara with those huge, frightened eyes. "Will you come with me? I can get you out of the quarantine zone. I have clearance. Why would you help me if you are so scared?" Hasta was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Because I have read the entire report. I know what humans are capable of. But I also know that you carried an injured Mellori child to the medical center last month when her parents were too far away to reach her. You did not have to do that." Amara remembered that day. The child had fallen and broken her arm. It had seemed like the obvious thing to do. That is why I am here, Hosta continued. Because I want to understand how the same species that survives impossible conditions can also be gentle. I want to understand how something so dangerous can also be kind. The security barrier lowered just enough for Amara to step through. Hosta led her into the empty corridor, her small body still shaking. What exactly did the assessment division find? Amara asked. Hosta looked back at her with an expression that was somehow sad and amazed at the same time. Everything, she said. We found everything. And it terrified us. They walked deeper into the station, leaving behind the chaos of the council chamber. Somewhere behind them, Amara could hear human voices calling out in confusion, demanding answers that nobody would give them. She was about to get those answers. She was about to see her homeworld through alien eyes for the first time. She did not know yet that it would change everything she thought she knew about being human. The archive room was cold and quiet, filled with glowing data screens that stretched from floor to ceiling. Hosta moved through the space with practiced ease, her small paws tapping against the metal floor. Amara followed, still trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. Before I show you the report, Hosta said, I need to explain something about the galaxy. Please do. Hosta pulled up a holographic display showing dozens of planets. They were beautiful worlds with gentle blue skies and calm green lands. Most sapient species evolved on worlds like these, Hosta explained. Stable climates, low radiation, few predators, predictable seasons, safe worlds. Amara nodded. And Earth is different. Hosta laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Different does not even begin to describe it. She pulled up another display. This one showed Earth, and it was surrounded by data points that pulsed red. Your world has active volcanoes that can destroy entire regions without warning. Your tectonic plates shift constantly, causing earthquakes that level cities. Your atmosphere produces storms powerful enough to flatten structures and kill thousands. You have ice ages that cover your planet in frozen death, followed by warming periods that melt everything and flood your coastlines. Amara frowned. Those things happen, yes, but we survive them. That is exactly the problem, Hosta said softly. You should not survive them. No species should survive them. In the past 500 million years, your planet has experienced 5 mass extinction events. 99% of every species that ever lived on Earth is now extinct. Your world is a death trap that constantly tries to kill everything on it. She pulled up more data. Images of Earth's creatures filled the screens. Your oceans contain predators with hundreds of teeth that can smell blood from great distances. Your land has animals that hunt in packs using coordinated strategies. You have insects that carry diseases which have killed millions of your own kind. You have plants that produce toxins, animals that produce venom, and fungi that can destroy organic tissue from the inside. Amara felt strange seeing these familiar things presented as horrors. Those are just normal animals, she said. Normal for a death world, Hosta replied. For the rest of the galaxy, these creatures are nightmares. We have nothing like them on our worlds. Our predators are slow and easily avoided. Our plants are not trying to poison us. She pulled up a new section of the report, and her voice grew quieter. But the most frightening part is not your planet. It is you. The display changed to show human anatomy. Amara saw diagrams of muscles, bones, organs, and a nervous system. Humans are persistent hunters, Hosta read from the report. They cannot outrun most prey initially, but they can follow prey for hours or days until the target collapses from exhaustion. They sweat to regulate temperature, allowing continuous activity in heat that would kill other species. Amara had learned about this in school. It had never seemed scary before. Your bodies produce a chemical called adrenaline during stress, Hosta continued. This chemical allows you to ignore pain, increases your strength, and sharpens your senses. You can continue fighting or running even when injured. Your bones can break and then heal stronger than before. Your skin forms scar tissue to seal wounds. You are self-repairing biological machines. All of that helps us survive, Amara said. Yes, that is what scares us. Hasta looked up at her. You survive everything. You survive your violent world, your deadly animals, your toxic environment. You survive diseases that live inside your own bodies. Did you know that most species in the galaxy have no internal bacteria? The idea that trillions of tiny organisms live inside you, and you have somehow made peace with them, is terrifying to us. She pulled up one more section. And then there is this. Humans voluntarily consume toxins for pleasure. Capsaicin, the chemical that makes your peppers hot, is a defense mechanism that plants evolved to stop creatures from eating them. Ethanol is literally poison. Caffeine is a pesticide. You drink these things every day because you enjoy how they make you feel. Amara thought about her morning coffee. She thought about the spicy food her grandmother used to make. She had never considered that these things might be strange. The report concludes with this observation, Hasta said. She read directly from the text. Humans are the only known species in the galaxy that hunts for entertainment. They kill creatures they do not intend to eat, then display the bodies as trophies. They have developed thousands of methods for killing other humans, and they practice these methods as sports and games. They watch simulated violence for fun. They tell stories about war and death as entertainment. The archive room fell silent. Do you understand now? Hasta asked. You come from a world that has tried to kill you for millions of years, and you did not just survive. You thrived. You conquered. You became the deadliest thing on the deadliest planet we have ever studied. Amara sat down heavily on a nearby chair. We never thought of ourselves that way, she said. Of course not, Hasta replied. To you, this is all normal. But to us, you are something out of our oldest nightmares. You are predators from a predator world, carrying poison in your bodies and death in your history. Amara looked at her hands. The same hands that had carried that injured Mallory child. The same hands that had comforted frightened alien students during their first days at the integration center. What happens now? She asked. Now, Hasta said, the collective decides what to do with you. Somewhere in the station, alarms began to sound. The quarantine was expanding. Humanity's place in the galaxy had just changed forever, and nobody knew what would come next. 3 weeks had passed since the reclassification, and the news feeds showed the same images over and over. Humans being escorted from shared living spaces. Human ships being turned away from ports. Human businesses closing because alien customers refused to enter. Captain David Nowak watched these reports from the bridge of his merchant vessel, the Steady Horizon. His ship was stuck in a holding pattern along with 200 other human vessels, none of them allowed to dock anywhere. Captain, we are running low on supplies. David turned to face his engineer, a four-armed cassowary named Brill. The gray-skinned alien had worked with David for 5 years. They had saved each other's lives more times than David could count. I know, David said. I'm trying to find a station that will let us dock. Brill was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that David had been dreading. Is it true? What the reports say about your world? David sighed. Which part? All of it. The predators, the diseases, the violence. Yes, David admitted. It is all true. But Brill, you have known me for 5 years. Have I ever hurt you? Have I ever threatened you? Brill shook his large head. No, you saved my life when the reactor caught fire last year. You carried me through the flames to safety. Then why does any of this matter? Brill looked at the news feeds, still playing on the main screen. Because now I understand what that rescue really meant. The fire would have killed me in seconds. But you walked through it like it was nothing. The heat that would have cooked my organs barely bothered you. I thought you were brave. Now I know you simply were not in danger the way I was. David did not know how to respond to that. I was still scared, he finally said. Fire can hurt humans too, but not the same way. Not nearly the same way. Brill turned away. I need to check the engines. He left the bridge, and David was alone with the news feeds. Across the galaxy, the same conversations were happening. Humans who had lived peacefully among aliens for years were suddenly seeing their relationships change. Friends became strangers. Colleagues became afraid to be in the same room. On the colony world of New Brisbane, a human doctor had treated thousands of alien patients over the past decade. Now her clinic stood empty because nobody would let her touch them. On the trading station of Port Harmony, A human chef who had run a popular restaurant for 6 years watched his alien customers stop coming one by one. On the research station Meridian, a team of human scientists found themselves locked out of their own laboratories because their alien colleagues had demanded their removal. The collective council held emergency sessions every day, debating what to do. Some delegates wanted humans completely expelled from collective space. Others argued for permanent quarantine zones where humans could live but never leave. A few voices suggested that humans should be allowed to prove themselves, but those voices were growing quieter. Amara watched these debates from a small room on the council station where she had been confined. Hosta visited her every day, bringing food and news. The council is leaning toward permanent isolation, Hosta reported. They want to create human-only zones separated from the rest of the collective. That is basically a prison, Amara said. Yes, but at least it is not extermination. Some delegates are calling for that. Amara felt sick. They want to kill us for being born on a dangerous planet. They are afraid. Fear makes people cruel, no matter what species they are. Hosta sat down beside her. I am trying to change their minds. I have been presenting data about human cooperation and compassion. I have been showing them records of humans helping aliens, protecting aliens, caring for aliens. Is it working? Slowly, very slowly. On the steady horizon, David received a message that changed everything. It was a distress signal from a collective research station called Caldera. An asteroid had struck the station, causing massive damage. Hundreds of researchers were trapped inside. The structure was failing, atmosphere was venting, and radiation levels were spiking. Why are they sending this to us? Brill asked. David pulled up the environmental data from the station. The temperature inside had reached levels that would kill most species within minutes. The radiation was high enough to cause cellular damage in seconds. Debris was blocking all standard approach routes. Because no one else can go in, David realized. The conditions would kill any rescue team before they reached the survivors. Brill looked at the data, then at David. But not humans. Not quickly, anyway. David opened a channel to the other human ships in the holding pattern. This is Captain Nowak of the Steady Horizon. A collective station is dying, and no one else can save them. I need volunteers for a rescue mission that the rest of the galaxy calls impossible. The responses came immediately. Human after human offered to help. Within the hour, a fleet of human vessels was moving toward Caldera. They did not ask for permission. They did not wait for orders. They simply went because people needed help and they were the only ones who could provide it. Behind them, the news feeds began reporting the same story across the galaxy. The deathworlders were heading into a disaster zone that everyone else had written off as unsurvivable. Nobody knew yet what would happen when they arrived, but everyone was watching. Research Station Caldera was dying. Flames poured from ruptures in the outer hull. Debris spun through space around it like a deadly cloud. The structure groaned and twisted as internal supports failed one by one. David brought the Steady Horizon as close as he dared, studying the damage through the main view screen. Life signs, he asked. His sensor officer, a young woman named Yuki Tanaka, worked her console. 347 survivors. Most are gathered in the central hub, but there are smaller groups scattered throughout the station. Temperature in there is over 60 degrees. Radiation is at lethal levels for most species. Lethal for them, David said. Not for us. Suit up. We're going in. The rescue team assembled in the cargo bay. David, Yuki, medic Rosa Gutierrez, and engineer Sam Whitehorse would lead the first wave. Other human volunteers from nearby ships were already arriving. Rosa checked her medical supplies. Most of these species cannot handle heat above 40 degrees. We need to get them out fast. Then let us not waste time talking, Sam said. They launched from the ship in emergency pods, threading through the debris field with skill that would have been impossible for most pilots. Human reflexes and human stubbornness carried them through impacts that would have killed anyone else. The first entry point was a breach in the station's lower section. The hole was surrounded by jagged metal and venting atmosphere, but it was the fastest way inside. David was the first through. The heat hit him immediately, harsh and heavy, but his body adjusted. Sweat began pouring down his face as his cooling systems activated the way evolution had designed them. This way, he said, checking his scanner. Survivors ahead. They moved through corridors filled with smoke and fire. The station's emergency systems had failed completely. Sparks flew from broken panels. The floor was hot enough to burn through standard alien footwear, but the human boots held. The first group of survivors was huddled in a sealed compartment. 12 Mellori researchers, their soft fur singed and their large eyes wide with fear. When the door opened and they saw humans standing in the flames, several of them screamed. "It is okay," Rosa said gently. "We are here to help you." "You came through the fire," one of them whispered. "That is what we do," Rosa replied. She began checking them for injuries, her hands steady and professional despite the heat that was making the Mellori gasp for breath. "Can you walk? We need to get you to the evacuation point." They could walk barely. David and his team led them through the burning corridors, shielding them from the worst of the heat with their own bodies. When one of the Mellori collapsed from heat exhaustion, Sam simply picked her up and carried her. "You are not even breathing hard," the Mellori said weakly. "Save your strength," Sam told her. "We have a long way to go." The evacuation point was a damaged docking bay where human ships were gathering survivors. As the first group arrived, more rescue teams pushed deeper into the station. Yuki found a group of Kasari trapped in a collapsing section. The ceiling was failing, and the only way to reach them was through a hallway filled with radiation so intense that even humans would suffer long-term damage. "I'm going in," she announced. "The exposure will take years off your life," David warned through the comm. "Then I'd better move fast." She ran through the radiation zone, grabbed the first Kasari she could reach, and carried him back. Then she went again, and again, and again. By the time she had rescued all 8, her dosimeter was screaming warnings, but all 8 Kasari were alive. Rosa set up a field hospital in the docking bay, treating burns and radiation sickness and heat stroke. Alien survivors watched in amazement as human medics worked through conditions that should have killed them. "How are you doing this?" asked a Velian scientist whose translucent skin was covered in burns. "Doing what?" Rosa asked while applying treatment to his wounds. "Surviving. Moving. Thinking. The conditions in here should have destroyed your nervous systems by now." Rosa smiled gently. "On Earth, we have places called deserts where the temperature reaches over 50 degrees regularly. We have places called volcanoes where people live next to rivers of molten rock. We evolved to survive extreme conditions because our planet gave us no choice. But the radiation will probably give some of us cancer in 20 years. But you would be dead in 20 minutes, and we could not let that happen." As the hours passed, the human rescue teams pulled more and more survivors from the dying station. They worked through sections that were completely on fire. They carried injured aliens through collapsed corridors. They performed repairs under conditions that every collective manual classified as immediately fatal. By the time the last survivor was evacuated, the station was beginning its final collapse. David stood on the bridge of the steady horizon and watched it fall apart. Station Commander Vess, a senior collective official who had been among the survivors, approached him. "I voted for your species to be quarantined," Vess said quietly. "I was afraid of what you might do with your abilities." "And now?" David asked. Vess looked at the human crews still returning to their ships, many of them injured, all of them exhausted but alive. "Now I have seen what you choose to do with those abilities." The commander turned to face him directly. "You walked through fire to save people who were afraid of you. Why?" David thought about the question for a moment. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And we could help. That is all the reason we ever needed." The rescue fleet began its journey back to collective space, carrying 347 survivors who had just witnessed something impossible. The deathworlders had come to save them, and they had succeeded. The footage spread across every network in the collective within hours. Humans walking through flames. Humans carrying survivors through radiation zones. Humans working steadily through conditions that would have killed any other species in minutes. The comments beneath the videos began to shift. "They risked their lives for us. They did not have to come. Nobody asked them to. Look at her face. She is burned all over, but she is still treating patients. Amara watched the coverage from her confinement room, tears running down her face. For 3 weeks, she had watched her species be treated like monsters. Now, she was watching them prove something different. Hostak arrived with news. The council has called another session. They want you to speak. Me? Why? Because Station Commander Vess requested it. She said the council needs to hear from a human directly. She said they need to understand. An hour later, Amara stood at the central platform of the council chamber. The same chamber where humanity had been condemned now waited to hear her defense. She looked out at the alien delegates. Many of them still looked afraid, but some of them looked uncertain, as if everything they thought they knew had been shaken. 3 weeks ago, Amara began, you learned what humans are capable of. You saw the assessor report. You saw our violent world, our deadly biology, our history of war and conflict. And you were afraid. She paused, letting that sink in. You were right to be afraid. Everything in that report is true. We come from a death world. We are built to survive things that would kill you. We have claws in our past, teeth in our history, blood on our ancestors' hands. The chamber was completely silent. But that is not the whole story. The same world that made us dangerous also made us something else. It made us survivors. And survivors learn one very important thing. Alone, you die. Amara pulled up images on the central display. Not images of predators or disasters, but images of humans helping each other. On Earth, we faced ice ages by huddling together for warmth. We faced predators by forming groups and protecting each other. We faced diseases by caring for the sick, even when it put us at risk. Our world tried to kill us every single day, and we learned that the only way to survive was together. She showed images from the Caldera rescue. Humans carrying aliens through fire. Humans shielding aliens from radiation with their own bodies. Yesterday, humans walked into conditions that everyone said were unsurvivable. They did not do it for glory or reward. They did it because people were dying and they could help. That is what our death world taught us. That is the other side of our violent nature. Hosta stepped forward to present her own findings. I have spent 3 weeks studying human history, she said. I have found violence, yes, but I have also found something else. Humans build hospitals to heal their enemies. They write laws to protect the weak. They create art that makes each other cry. They raise children who are not their own. They give their lives for strangers. She looked at the council with her large, earnest eyes. The assessment report measured what humans can do, but it did not measure what humans choose to do. And that choice is what matters. Station Commander Vess rose from her seat. I was trapped on Caldera, she said. The rescue teams knew that conditions inside would damage their bodies. Some of them will suffer health problems for the rest of their lives because of the radiation exposure. They knew this before they entered. They came anyway. She turned to face the human section of the chamber. I asked Captain Nowak why he did it. He said it was because we needed help and he could provide it. That was all. No complicated reasoning. No expectations of reward. Just a simple belief that when someone needs help, you help them. The chamber fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Thoughtful instead of fearful. High Assessor Quillen rose from the Assessment Division section. The crystalline being floated toward Amara, light shifting through their body in complex patterns. We studied your world for 3 years, Quillen said. We cataloged every danger, every threat, every horror. But we made a mistake. What mistake? Amara asked. We measured only what you are. We did not measure what you have become. Quillen turned to address the council. The humans did not choose their planet. They did not choose to evolve as predators. But they did choose to use those abilities to protect others instead of destroy them. That choice is something we did not expect. Quillen looked at Amara with something that might have been respect. The Assessment Division recommends a new classification for humans. Not apex deathworlders. Not minor threat. Something else. What classification? Asked the council speaker. Guardians, Quillen said. Emergency responders for situations that no other species can survive. Protectors for the fragile. Rescuers who can walk through fire. A murmur went through the chamber. Delegates who had fled from humans 3 weeks ago were now considering the idea of humans as defenders. Amara felt hope rising in her chest for the first time since this nightmare began. Will you accept this role? Quillen asked her. Will humans become the guardians that the galaxy did not know it needed? Amara looked at the delegates, at Hasta, at the footage still playing on the displays. We did not survive our death world alone, she said. We survived by protecting each other. If you will let us, we will protect you too. The vote took only minutes. Humanity's place in the galaxy had changed once again. This time, for the better. 6 months changed everything. The Human Emergency Response Corps had grown from a handful of volunteers to a fleet of thousands. Ships painted with the new Guardian symbol patrolled the space lanes, ready to respond to any disaster that fell outside normal capabilities. Amara stood in the training center on Luna Station, watching the latest group of recruits prepare for their certification tests. Humans worked alongside aliens who had once feared them, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. Hasta had become the primary liaison between the Corps and the collective species. She taught humans about the physiological limits of the beings they would protect, ensuring that rescue operations did not accidentally harm the survivors. Remember, Hasta told a group of trainees, Mellori cannot tolerate temperatures above 40 degrees for more than a few minutes. Kasari have respiratory systems that fail in low oxygen environments. Velian skin is extremely sensitive to radiation. You must know these things before you enter a disaster zone. The trainees listened carefully. 6 months ago, these same facts had been used to explain why humans were dangerous. Now, they were tools for protection. David Nowak commanded the flagship of the Guardian fleet, the Steady Horizon having been refitted with the best emergency equipment the collective could provide. His crew had grown to include beings from a dozen species, all of them volunteers who wanted to work alongside the humans they had once feared. Brill was still his chief engineer. I never apologized, Brill said one day while they were reviewing fleet operations. For what? For being afraid of you. For treating you differently after the reclassification. David shook his head. You were being rational. The information you received said I was dangerous. It would have been foolish to ignore it. But the information was incomplete. Yes, it was. David looked at his old friend. And now you know the complete picture. That is all that matters. The alert came at midday. A massive solar flare was building on the star nearest to the Mellori homeworld. The flare would release radiation levels that would sterilize the planet's surface within hours. Evacuation was the only option, but the radiation was already climbing to levels that would kill Mellori workers before they could complete the process. All available Guardian ships to Mellori Prime, the dispatch ordered. This is a Category Red emergency. David's fleet was the closest. They jumped to faster than light within minutes. When they arrived, chaos had already begun. Mellori evacuation shuttles were grounded because the pilots could not survive the radiation outside their ships. Millions of Mellori were trapped on the surface, waiting for death. All human crews, prepare for surface operations, David announced. We're going down there. The Guardian ships descended through radiation that would have killed any alien species. Human crews poured out onto the Mellori surface, moving quickly to organize the evacuation. Rosa Gutierrez set up field hospitals in every major city, treating Mellori who had already suffered radiation exposure. Human medics worked in conditions that were slowly damaging their own bodies, never stopping, never complaining. You are hurt, a Mellori patient said, pointing to the burns appearing on Rosa's skin. I will heal, Rosa replied. You would not. That is why we are here. The evacuation took 3 days. 3 days of humans walking through radiation storms to reach isolated communities. 3 days of human ships flying through solar wind that would have torn alien vessels apart. 3 days of human bodies absorbing damage that would have been instantly fatal to anyone else. By the end, over 4 million Mellori had been evacuated to orbital stations and neighboring worlds. The death toll was less than 200, all of them elderly or sick beings who could not survive the stress of transport. Without the humans, the death toll would have been everyone. Amara visited the refugee camps after the evacuation was complete. She walked among the Melori, checking on their needs, coordinating relief efforts. A small Melori child approached her, too young to understand the politics of the past months. The child looked up at Amara with those huge, trusting eyes. "Are you one of the giants who walked through fire?" the child asked. Amara smiled and knelt down to be at eye level. "I suppose I am. My mother said you saved us. She said you got hurt to keep us safe." "We did." The child considered this carefully. Then she reached up and took Amara's hand. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for being strong so we could be safe." Amara felt her eyes fill with tears. 6 months ago, this child's mother had probably been terrified of humans. Now her daughter was holding a human's hand without fear. That night, Amara stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, watching human ships continue their work below. The radiation storm was fading, but there were still survivors to find, still relief supplies to deliver. She thought about how far they had come, from minor threat to Deathworld, from feared to trusted, from monsters to guardians. Humanity had spent thousands of years believing they were alone in the universe. Then they had spent 3 years believing they were unremarkable. Then 3 weeks believing they were monsters. Now, they had found their true place. Not as conquerors, not as threats, but as the protectors that the galaxy had never known it needed. Below her, a human rescue shuttle descended into the lingering radiation to reach one more isolated group of survivors. The pilot knew the exposure would cost her years of her life. She went anyway, because that was what Deathworlders did. They survived the impossible, and they made sure others survived it too. On the observation deck, the small Melori child appeared beside Amara. She pressed her tiny hand against the window and watched the shuttle disappear into the glowing storm. She did not flinch. She waved.